funds out. Therefore, all the other banks are like that. It can lead to a run in the system. So we are saying that let's add one more pillar. And this time we are asking the institutions that are involved in that space to contribute a little bit of their resources into a pool of funds so that we can use that to address one or two challenges that can come in the system. Now, let me quickly add that deposit insurance is not the panacea for all banking sector problems. If one or two banks go under and you have an adequate fund, you can deal with it. But if it's if 10 banks suddenly go under, it may be very difficult to deal with deposit insurance. But at least we know that not all banks will go on at the same time. If one or two banks do happen, and you have built a fund over the years, it is easier. It is easier and it's doable to resolve that problem, and therefore you take away the risk to the wider financial. So that is a potential benefit that will accrue. And I'm saying that because also that we have this assurance that if the bank goes under, it will be dealt with, people are no longer afraid to put their money in the bank. So you get all resources for the bank. Speed up economic growth. So there are benefits to be derived. Sure. Benefits are what I'm telling, that it provides for stability in the finance system. It avoids bank run, builds confidence in the finance system, creates a pool of funds that you can use to invest. And I think that those benefits outweigh the cost that we're talking about.
Can I have, if I get the lady's question, fantastic.
Thank you very much. My name is Ikwa Iguakun. I'm from First Ghana Savings and Loans. I think this is a very good initiative, and we'll thank Mr. Sure we implement these laws. I would say yes, we are thankful for this law, but what we need to emphasize on is to strengthen the supervision role of the central bank, because we have DKM going, we have UT Bank going, because the supervision element of the central bank is really lax. So yes, we may have, I beg your pardon, yes, we may have this act that has come in, which is a very good initiative. But my humble suggestion would be that we concentrate a bit more on the supervision aspect. And then it rolls on to the second one, that we're saying that the corporation should be independent. I think that because the central bank has the role of supervision, we should have someone who is watching the watchdog or the watchman, so that although we have the corporation that has been set up to do its role, we should still have the central bank supervising what the corporation does. Thank you.
Nana, can you pass just a brief comment on, I'll come back to you frankly on this. On this point she just made about this law, does it absolve the Bank of Ghana of its role to supervise and monitor?
I don't think so. Their prudential supervisions are still there, and the passing of the act is to ensure that depositors are protected if something goes wrong. Because in finance, we often say that the only certainty we have is uncertainty. And that whatever you do, the risk will be there. That's why if depositors are banking with deposit-taking institutions, then there's a risk element in. Act provides some amount of assurance that at least if a bank goes down or a specialized deposit-taking institution goes down, then you have some protection that you can have. So I think is something that is good.
Frankly,
Yes, but that shouldn't take away from the fact that the central bank supervision should be intensified, because lately what we are hearing in the news is not good news at all, in the sense that the institutions that are going down outside the banking sector is becoming one too many.
okay. Franklin, briefly on this, and I'll take 3 questions.
Okay. Let me add just a few quick comments. If you look at the Banks and SDI Act 930 and 931 were passed together, and there's cross-referencing between the two acts if you read them carefully. The regulation and supervision of banks is vested in the central bank. Regulation and supervision is vested in the central bank. Solution corporation's role is supplementary. It's just to step in and pay depositors. The rest of the resolution remains with the central bank. This is how it's been structured until the mandate of the corporation changes 3 years down the road. Then we can add other responsibilities. And so if you look at the Act, there was nothing about it. If you look at the SDI, there was the Ghana Deposit Protection Act, there was nothing about participation in examination and supervision. But since the Patriot Act, we've taken a look at some of the things, and we think that the corporation may need some limited examination powers. And so there are amendments that are going to allow the corporation to visit banks to undertake certain limited examinations of deposit information, and also to join the Bank of Ghana in their on-site examination if need be. That flexibility is going to be given to the corporation when those amendments are passed. Now, the second thing is that the corporation is independent of the central bank. But you know, because the central bank has wherewithal, first MD, but as they went along and they got firmly on the ground, the central bank governor still remains on the board, but it's chaired by an outside person. So that complete separation will come along with it. But initially, you need a central bank to support you. So if you look at the capitalization, the central bank is providing 50% of the capital, and government is providing the remaining 50%. The central bank governor will, or his appointed deputy, will chair the board. But the board is independent. It's a 7-member board that includes petition from various sectors. And that board is independent of the central bank. It will take its decisions and appoint its staff and do all the things that have to do with running the scheme itself. So there's some independence of that.
I have a question.
My name is Abena Kesoa Brown from the National Banking College, and I have 2 questions. The first question is, are there any membership rights? You know, I know Bank of Ghana is leading, but what if if we look at Ghana Association of Bankers, do they have any rights to contribute, or is there anything like that for them? The second question is, Nana, I wanted to follow up on your donor funding of the initial amount, whether that is a reality.
Okay. One more question? Please give the microphone to the Queen Mother here. Okay, please, yes. Let me get your question.
My name is Prince Kofi Kuljesin, AGI. Listening to Seth Santi and listening to Ivan's mother, I am kind of worried about this law, because Seth clearly said that there are issues to be resolved in the law. So I can foresee a rebuff from the banks when time comes for action for the law. We know, as Seth also said, the problems of this country, why we are where we are. Is it deposit insurance law we needed, or the law that needs to keep the problems? Now, the president of Ghana appreciates that the interest rate in Ghana is too much. The Minister of Finance appreciates the interest rate of Ghana is too much. The governor of Bank of Ghana appreciates the interest rate of Ghana is too much. Seth, sitting there as a lawyer, appreciate the interest rate of Ghana is too much. And that is the problem of presidents are blamed. You know, people use election material. How can't we cure that problem? What would happen if governor sit at the next policy rate to say that the policy is rated by 10% so that this country can leapfrog? What exactly is the barrier? You know, is it an economic barrier? Some business issue. The banks are borrowing at 30%. KM are borrowing at 60, 90%. To Ivan's mother, after sitting in Kananshi the whole day, 24 hours, she goes the money in the bank, the next she's crying, hallelujah, Sopho, help me. How can we cure that element of Ghana's problem, where the interest rate can come down so that this country can leapfrog, so that these laws are more beneficial to us than litigation tomorrow in the courts? Thank you.
Fantastic, Mr. Clovis. I'm grateful that you remembered my mom, because we seem to be forgetting the millions and millions of market women out there. And that's why I want to hear from our Queen Mother there, because she can bring a bit of that into the conversation as well. Please, your name.
My name is Dr. Nana Apientua the Fourth. Asim Fosuni Fahima. I'll veer off a little bit from what is being discussed over here. But once that company's names is being mentioned, that is why I want, if I'll be grateful if the rep for Bank of Ghana will enlighten us more. It's about this DKM business. And being a traditional ruler, I would like to ask the rep from Bank of Ghana to enlighten us more, because quite recently we saw Capital Bank and then GUT being absorbed by Commercial Bank. And there, their monies were paid. Because when you go to cash money with UT Bank or Capital Bank check, you'll be giving the money, all right. But with DKM, this is where my people are crying. You know, women like me, we sit in the sun and do a whole lot of jobs, place our money in the banks with the idea that we are going to get a little interest on it, no matter how the interest is. Now the money, we couldn't get it, it's lost. So please, Rep for Bank of Ghana, can you please explain this for us? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Franklin, your plate is full. Your plate is absolutely full. And you can actually combine that last comment with Mr. Klugeson's comment, because I think it's almost the same, and address it. And then I'll come to Seth and Nana also to also expand on it.
Yeah, before I do that, there's something that keeps slipping, and I need to mention before I forget. Mr. Santi referred to Section 13, the exclusions from the deposits that are not covered. Yes, it's very complicated. After we had passed the act, we've looked at it, especially when it comes to implementation. We found some challenges. So we are making some amendments to that section. And you take out those gray areas where you have to refer to relations of the director and all that. We're just making it straight. The straight deposits are deposits of which we don't know the owner. Deposits that are, what do you call it, are frozen. And then deposits of directors and key management staff. Those that we know. We're not going to add the shareholders and all those. We've taken those out. So we've simplified the deductions. Yeah. And even since looking at the numbers, we've seen that foreign currency deposits is a very significant portion of deposits. And in some jurisdictions, foreign currency deposits are covered, but just that they are covered in local currency. So we're looking at perhaps even making some amendment to that section. So hopefully when we have a session with the Parliament, we do look at those amendments. One of the things that we might look at. So that I should mention that. Now coming to the specific questions. DKM. Even though I'm in the bank, I'm a bit outside the bank. My focus is on deposit protection. So, but what I do know is that in the case
But
of
that is
DKM,
deposit protection.
yes, I've seen that. There was a process that was started with DKM, and I
Okay.
left with him.
Okay.
But what I do know is that a liquidator was appointed, and the process is ongoing. Once he is appointed, he has to handle all the process of assembling the liabilities and determining the assets that are available, and what can be paid to the deposit. That is different from the way UT and Capital Bank were handled. In the case of UT and Capital Bank, there was a P, what they call a purchase and assumption transaction. So GCB took over selected assets and the liabilities of the two banks. And so that's why there was a smooth transfer of the assets and liabilities that were selected to Ghana Commercial Bank. And so customers for the bank continue to operate as if they were still with the bank, even though the name of, only what has happened is the name of the bank has changed from UT or Capital to GCB. That transaction is different from the way DKM was handled. But I know that maybe those in the supervision function can throw more light on it. I'm no longer in that section. But what I do know is that the two approaches were different. This approach involved appointing a liquidator to take over assets, realize them, and pay the deposit. Then coming to
Yes.
question. Let me say that the issue of the high interest rates in the economy, we all are concerned because all of us borrow from the banking system. But the issues to do with the high interest rate, as I mentioned in my presentation, some of them are macro in nature, some are micro. The macro issues have to do with inflation in the economy. If you look at their trajectory, we seem to get inflation trending down. But inflation is still relatively high in our economy. And so long as inflation is at that level, people who part with their money want compensation over and above inflation so they don't lose value. So that forms a base for determining interest rate. The central bank can drop interest monetary policy rate to 10%, but the banks may not respond. Where the banks have taken on deposits, they are saddled with certain costs that they cannot immediately disengage from. You've taken a deposit at 26%. You cannot go and lend that deposit at 15%, because then who bears the difference of 11%? And so that's a structure problem that will take time to resolve. But we need to continue to work on the macroeconomy, bring inflation down, bring the government deficit down, and bring interest rates down. The TB market already is beginning to behave in that direction. If we can continue to work on inflation and bring inflation down, I believe the interest rates will come down. The central bank is worried about inflation because that is our mandate. We are required, we are judged by how we inflation in the economy. And so if we see that inflation is not moving the direction we are, we cannot drop the monetary policy rate. So we need to work together with the industry, and over time, I believe that we'll see this trending down. How fast it will come depends on several other factors that are beyond the control of the central bank. This will be my response to your
Okay, Mr. Asante, you wanna contribute? You okay? Please, no, Champo.
Yeah. Then there was an issue about the donor funding. Really, the corporation is going to be set up with capital from government and the central bank. Central bank is providing the equivalent of 30 million euros, and government is required to provide the equivalent amount. Now, government, the project that was started with support from German government. German government is providing a loan of 30 million euros to Ghana government. The Ghana government in turn will pass on that loan to the corporation, and the government will then service that debt. So it's not really, it's not a donor fund as such, because the loan that government is borrowing, but it's a long-term loan at a very reasonable rate, and government will pay that over time. I think it's a 25-year loan. But those funds will come to capitalize the corporation, not to be able to deliver on this mandate and the scheme. So that's how it is. If there's any donor funding, there's another 1 million that the German government is providing, which is a grant. And that grant is broken into two parts. 0.5 million goes to help set up the corporation. So they will provide a technical assistant who will work with the initial start of the corporation to put in place the structures. The other half, 0.5 million euros will be used to build capacity of the supervision department. So banking supervision department, other financial supervision department will get support to build capacity to be able to effectively supervise the banking system. So in terms of donor funding, it's only that element that we can talk about. The 30 million euros is coming as a loan to the government of Ghana to use to fund the capitalization of the Deposit Protection Corporation.
I want to take brief comments now because we have 3 minutes to wrap up from Nanoto Champon. From all the comments you've heard, how would you wrap this up? And I guess it's instructive to comment on on how, for the market woman, for example, how, and also address the point about this. We're having this conversation here at the Labadi Beach Hotel, when we will acknowledge that this really affects the small depositor more than anybody else. And you can't find them at Labadi Beach Hotel. You find them at Mokla, at Kanishi, at Bantama, etc., etc. And probably you need to contribute to this as well, frankly. How do we target these groups to get them to understand this process that is going to come to? We are implementing this when? Fully by April, I think, frankly. That hopefully by April. I mean, how do we target them? How do we get them to appreciate this and be the confidence that we've spoken about here today? Oh, no.
Yeah, I think if you take the Queen Mother's comment about DKM, now in the absence of deposit protection, quite a large chunk of people will not come into the financial system. But if they can see that there is some protection there, or is limited, they will have some confidence to come into the financial system. So overall, the law is for the benefit of the depositors, and especially those who do not want to be included in the system. Once they get to know about this law, then they will be included. So it encourages financial inclusion.
Yeah, Seth, your final thoughts?
I mean, I think the point about DKM raises a very important point about how we communicate the benefits of this law. Because I think that if you look at anecdotally the evidence of losses to the population, it's actually happened at the very lower end of the market, where by people taking deposits who are actually not licensed to take deposits. And those kind of losses will not be covered by this law. I think it's important that we get that communication out properly. I think somebody raised the issue of supervision. I think the issue that point is addressed by supervision and not deposit insurance. So we need to be realistic in what we communicate about the law. I think my second point to wrap up will be that I'm very pleased by the fact that I'm not actually sort of dampening the law. Don't take my criticisms. They are not actually criticisms, they're suggestions of improvement that frankly indicates that these are all being worked on, and I'm very pleased with that. But I think that, look, the issue of independence is still very important. I think we need to look at it. I think we cannot have a system where the Bank of Ghana is allowed, or the Deposit Insurance Corporation, let me choose my words carefully, perceives itself as a department of the Bank of Ghana. It needs to have the ability to operate independently, and that's very important because it protects other people's money, monies belonging to other banks. If there is a failure of supervision, that corporation should say that
100, perhaps
seconds, the market woman who really this act is about.
Public education. But we have held on to it for now because there are two key steps that we still need to take. We have amendments before Parliament that need to be passed. And we also have an agreement with the German government that will release the 30 million euros to government to fund the corporation. These steps are very critical, and we have no control over when they will happen. And so we didn't want to start the hype and raise people's awareness when we are not even clear when it's going to start. But as soon as the amendments go through, and hopefully that should happen anytime soon, we will then begin a rollout of the public education program. This is about the public, about the small saver in the banking system. So they need